First of all, maybe, yeah, is it a promotion? Does the picture editor have to be the best photographer? Or are you being put in that job because you are the best administrator? Or you have an eye for image?
Arrow someone who's going to start us off.
Okay. I never met Vivek. I know so much about you, just reading online also. Maybe we can get started with Vivek.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, my journey actually is via the photography side of this, okay, essentially speaking. But mine has been a kind of interesting journey in that actually I've basically, aside from my first couple of years of being a photographer with Reuters, like I've always done both in my career. So actually the starting point of my career is a taxi driver. So we should probably start there. Because I came out of college with a photography degree, and as most people in this room and many of the people that would have joined us and that have degrees and training in photography would know, it's worth as much as toilet paper when you come out of it. So you have to sort of hustle a little while till you find a way into the industry. And for me, that was driving night shift taxis while I was looking for work as a stringer with the newspapers down in Sydney in Australia. I didn't get full-time work as a photographer, but I started on the desk at AAP, which was the national agency of Australia. So that's actually where I began my sort of formal career in photography. I was what we would call a desk editor at that point, which is similar to like what most desk editors do in any of our agencies these days. That's that frontline kind of job where you're double checking the captions and you're double checking the photos for like anything that's a miss, that kind of thing. Last line of defense before it goes to the wire kind of thing. So I started there. But when I came to Singapore, I was half desking and half shooting at Reuters. So they had a global photo desk operation that was based in Singapore for a good 10 years, from 2005 to around about 2015, and then it started to go regional again. And so I worked on that desk while also shooting, and then within a couple of years of moving to the full-time shooting role, I did Southeast Asia. Maye and I started around the same time in what were then competing agencies, I guess, but now we've come around full circle. I was a chief photographer. I've then been like a publisher at the New York Times, so I've done this from the client's end as well. And now at Getty, my role is kind of like actually a crystallization of all of those different kinds of experiences. Quite a lot of photography. In all my career, I have always been an editor as well in different forms. So a desk editor, a guy who edits live, like say big sports and things like that. Then I've also done the editing for the news. So like for 4 years, I actually put together the International New York Times, which is that, that paper that you see in all the airport lounges and stuff. And now this job is also editing, but it's a kind of like a different idea of editing. It's a little bit more conceptual. So I've always done both. That's been my pathway. But I also just wanted to kind of emphasize, because a lot of people don't understand this out there, that an editor means a lot of different things, actually, as everyone else that's on this call is going to tell you. So I'll leave it at that, because you'll see that variety when people are talking.
Maybe I want to jump to Hui-Fen. How much editing do you actually do, or is for your job like in charge of hiring or scheduling or managing the resources, or do you actually have a lot of time in editing the works that are being shot?
Hi everyone. Hi. Okay, I joined SPH in 1999. So this is like my 25th, 26th year with SPH. So I started as a photojournalist, and we have a team of 22 photojournalists now. So as a photojournalist, we like to be out and about, and we don't like to be confined to a 9 to 5 job. And over at our desk, it's a bit like a punishment sometimes, initially. And I personally resisted like trying to be, being confined in the desk for a couple of years. I managed to escape that, but eventually, I mean, we accept our fate, like if we don't manage the picture desk ourselves, then sometimes they will assign someone else who is, who doesn't have a photography background, photojournal background to manage the desk. So that's how we, step up, and instead of like shooting, then we help to, edit the photos, go through the assignments. Yeah. So how do we, okay, so other than taking photos and looking at images, there are a lot of administrative work to do, yes. Logistic, getting access for talks to cover an assignment. Okay, like drone also, like drone photography, right? There are lots of paperwork to be done, and sending the talks for training. Hoping that they, in Singapore, the CAS is very, very strict on media photographer doing drone photography. So we got to send them for classes, pass the theory and the practical tests. Yeah, all this administrative work to be done. So sometimes people just see the final image, right? But the process of getting it is actually a long journey.
So is it the same for all? Like, I mean, in Sanjit, you work for Bloomberg. Is there any like paperwork, administrative, or is it pure editing and assigning?
So my role is a little different. So I kind of I assign photography in Southeast Asia, and I also help other colleagues. So we have our team is we have 3 different headquarters. We have London, we have New York, and we have Hong Kong. So I used to be in the Hong Kong bureau, and then I moved for personal reasons back to Kuala Lumpur, where I was initially based. And how we work is within the team, everybody has countries or parts of the regions allocated to them. So within the Asia desk, I have Southeast Asia, and I also cover the weekend. I have one part. I cover the Saturday. So when I cover Saturday, it means that I'm actually covering the entire for that 8 hours that there is no other photo desk working. I'm manning Europe, Middle East, Americas, and Asia, which means that if anything goes wrong, for example, I remember back in the days when it may be as a really small issue now, but when Trump got COVID, there's panic. It was like, okay, Trump's got COVID. It was midnight. What do we do? Who do we call? So we call up the US desk and we say, okay, there is an online editor. There's an editor on duty when they go to sleep. So you call them up and say, who's the photographer we can assign? Or you pick up the book and look at the roster of photographers and who to call and what to do. So it's kind of taking the responsibility of not only your country or the region, but as a global desk. Right? You always have to think about it as a global desk, especially when you work for a sort of a larger news organization. I also co-curate Bloomberg.com. So when you log into Bloomberg.com, the way it looks, what photo, for which story, I don't design, I decide what photo goes onto it, how the website should change, and what the visual look and element would be. And, as stories come in and stories move, and, based on what's being done. So that's one part of my work. It's kind of a major part. But I also assign, which is what I really love to do. I'm a self-taught photographer, and so when I started, I came from a design background, graphic design background, and I came to photography because of things. I lived in India. I'm an Indian. I lived in India for many years, and that's where you see all these stories coming in front of you, and you feel the need to sort of be able to tell those stories, be a good narrator. But very early on in my career, I realized, don't mind me saying, and if anybody out there, not pointing fingers, photographers are terrible editors, because they are emotional about the photograph. They feel, I've climbed the mountain to get the photograph, and I think that photo should make it to the edit. It doesn't matter. Very early on in my career, there's this old colleague of mine, not old, as in a very old friend of mine, Findley. He said, if it's not good, don't add it to the edit. And I would say that if the photo is not good, if the photo got published and you don't like it, you shouldn't have filed it. So the photo editors, so I kind of felt that I needed to sort of, learn that part, because I was terrible at it. So I got an opportunity to work with Bloomberg as a photo editor, and also primarily because I also had a slip disc injury, so I realized that my photography days were sort of quite limited. But yeah, I was lucky, and so that's how what I do is I edit. I really enjoy editing work, sort of putting together edits of how it looks, and yeah. So I don't know. Does it answer your question? Did I go all around town? Sorry.
And so you guide photographers and tell them like things that
yes and no. I mean, I don't like hand holding. I like to work with photographers where I
is that part of editor? Is that part of the job of a picture editor for you?
the pitch. Yeah. Well, different agencies have different views of how they assign. I like to assign a photographer in a way I trust their judgment. I trust their eye. I mean, I personally feel a photographer should not be an illustrator, but an interpreter. You give them what we need, and they should be able to come back with their ideas. It may not always work, it doesn't have to work all the time. And that's the beauty of it, because different photographers will bring different things to the same table. So it's that experimentation.
So then actually I can take that and ask Luke about that, because Luke, you do a lot of the stories that are featured on Hard Stories. So you have somewhat of that dual role. So how do you as a photographer who is a terrible editor become a good editor when you're editing the work? I mean, I don't mean you're a terrible editor.
Let me start by giving a bit of background into Hard Stories, because I think a lot of our viewers won't have heard of the platform. We're very new, we're very small. We kind of sit on the polar opposite to the mammoths of Getty and Bloomberg. I've spent all my adult life, 20 years, working as a freelance photojournalist. And then in 2021, I co-founded Hard Stories, which is basically a platform where we focus on long-form investigative, in-depth feature stories, purely on the subjects of human rights and environmental justice in Thailand. And then all the other topics that come in that, whether it's land rights, gender equality, labor rights, that type of thing. So we publish both in Thai and English. We're a completely dual language platform, but we put a huge emphasis on photography. Our subjects are quite hard. They're very serious. They're also very long stories, some of them. So we really use photography to pull people in to the story. Oops, sorry. To pull people into the story. And it's a really important part of what we do. So we also work exclusively with local journalists. So we're not just a media platform. We're totally non-profit, but we collaborate and kind of mentor local photographers who perhaps aren't quite ready to get assignments for the Bloombergs and the Gettys, but they're amazing photographers. We also feel that Thailand kind of lacks a platform for them. There's not that many serious platforms that focuses a lot on photography. The rates for freelance documentary photographers can be absolutely dire. And so we wanted to create this place that basically the serious stories are at the forefront, and then these amazingly talented local photographers can collaborate with us and work on assignments. So I totally agree with Sanjit about editing our work is much harder. And sometimes it's really frustrating when you send your edit to publications and you look at it and you say, well, why did they use that picture? Out of all the pictures they could have used, they used that picture. And you just, exactly like they said, just you don't send it. But so my role in Hard Stories is to do the photo editing and work very closely with the photographers. But I do find it infinitely easier to edit other people's work than my own, for sure. You can be much more critical. And the reason why I kind of photograph as well as being the photo editor of Hard. So it's more to do with the budget. We're non-profit. We rely on funding. We have a very limited budget. We have a very small team. And if we can save a bit of funding from here to put it into another story, then I will shoot it. But our preference is always to hire local photographers.
Okay.
Just to add,
Sanjit, Vivek, I'm just going to go to Maye-E and then hold that thought.
Because I'm sitting in the room, I get forgotten in the background. So no, I'm just going to say this. I think we need to define certain things, right? I think for our audience and even among ourselves, we were talking over lunch. The role photo editor has a lot of different meanings, right? You have your desk photo editors who are there to process your pictures and make sure that you don't fuck up the caption and to make sure that nothing looks suspicious. So they do, like Vivek said, it's the last line of defense before. We need somebody to handle these thousands of pictures that are coming in from all over the world and process that and put that out. So that's one type of photo editor. Let's organize the thoughts a bit, okay? And then you have people like Hui-Fen, who runs a desk locally, and her 22 photographers. There's staffing, there's scheduling, there's equipment, there is like the government request, the access, do you know what I mean? The accreditations. And then also dealing with the text colleagues that need certain photos to go with certain stories. So that is that kind of editor. And then you have Sanjit and Vivek, who needs to, they follow the sun, and probably they kind of have roles that is region specific, right? To assign photographers to top stories that's happening. And then you have people that look, which is probably closer to what I do. So for myself, there's this other type of editor where I run the long form visual storytelling at Reuters globally, right? And what we do is, for me, it's more the investigatives, the features, stuff that is just more than what's in front of you right now, and you go a little bit deeper. But my role as a photo editor is not so, I don't process photos and publish them at all. But what I do is I work very closely with photographers who then pitch a story, right? And they come to you with an idea. But my role is more of an editor in capacity where I develop the story with the photographer, and I also develop the story with the text editors and everybody to find the deepest way to tell the story, right? And now, which will come to Elizabeth's question later about the different platforms and what you need to serve. But my role is more like what Keijin was suggesting. You kind of become like a mentor coach, and also you do the editing and the processing in terms of like the sequencing of pictures. And as the photographer is shooting, you come back and you go, hey, okay, what do you think you're missing? Has this character been developed enough? Do we need to search other parts of the story, right, to find the visual variety details? So you're kind of looking after stories and how they're visualized. So you have this editor, but it's an editorial leader and more of a mentor. For me, a bit of my background, so I'm doing this, the Rivers I introduced. So I was a photojournalist with the Associated Press for 20 years. I was with Straits for 3 years. So, but for me, I did both news and then long form investigations in the enterprise team. So now I'm in New York, and this is where I'm doing my job from. But as an editor, my role was to support photographers, right? Find the best version of the story, but also be kind of like a format, someone that's just bringing all the formats together to find the best way to tell a story. I will make sure that text is on board, video is on board, and photos. If the team has the same context as they go out and use together. So that's the other type of photo editor that we're looking at. So when people say I'm a photo editor, I think you can be a little bit more informed now, where you can go, okay, so what's your main job? Do you work with photographers or kind of run the show? So just something I wanted to summarize for you.
Hold that thought, you mentioned the picture editors are often the last line of defense. That means before the thing gets published.
For certain roles, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to reverse it, and it is for some people also the first line of contact. Like, for example, a freelancer who wants to freelance for Getty. Is Vivek someone that they should write to? Hey, hi, I'm so and so.
Yeah, so that is where your photo editors become the hiring manager as well, right? So you have that as well. Actually, so that's a short answer. I wanted to just
hang
come
on.
to a very important point.
We want to bring in our other panelists so that everybody gets the first say.
I would laugh.
No. We have
No, but I do have a very important point. Can I just bring this up? You mentioned about, is it a promotion?
Yes,
Do you outrank? I think we have to be very careful about how we, yes, in terms of rank, right? You might be in the ecosystem of the company, you might be senior, but I think all of us in this room, at least I know them, it doesn't mean that it's my ego versus your ego as a photographer.
It's also a language thing because editor suddenly carries a...
You do have to make the editorial call,
but there are people who think that being made a picture editor is actually a punishment.
Well, it depends, right? Look, I think at the end of the day, for me, it was a natural progression because I've done this on the field for 20 years. If I could continue to shoot, I will. Everybody goes into editing for different reasons. Mine is prioritizing where I am in my life and also just trying to support the rest of the team because I like the team. I want to care for you just want to live the whole visual landscape, right? But some people have no choice.
So this is a question I'm going to throw out to everybody after we get our last panel speaker to speak, which is it possible for someone who is not a photographer to become an excellent picture editor?
Wait. Absolutely, at 100%. My wife is a great example of this, who is not actually has not really in any serious sense been a photographer. She dabbles and she shoots a few pictures here and there, but actually she's not a photographer by training. She's an editor by training. And one of the things that photographers do need to understand is that this skill set that we have, and it's a varied skill set, as May points out. Like in my career, I've done at least 4 different kinds of photo editing. The frontline job that you're talking about, to the conceptual job that I am doing now, to the publishing job of a newspaper, to the assigning job that I used to do before and still do actually in parts. So, it's quite important to remember that your editors are essentially people that have like a deep insight into market if you're a photographer, and that's something that you don't always appreciate when you're a photographer. And I'm saying that having had that journey as a photographer to an editor in 4 different formats myself. So the place where we can really bring value is of course, you bring your pictures to us and all that. And a short answer, Kachin, yes, they can bring their pictures to me, but I also wanted to make the point that they should do it in a formal way. Like, don't spam us on social, don't get into our personal inboxes. I'm Vivek Prakash, I work at Getty. It's not that difficult. Figure it out and send a form.
How they can get your attention.
And I think everyone here would more or less kind of agree with that approach, So yeah, I just wanted to point that out, that when we're talking about this, different levels, different things, different kinds of editing, the thing not to forget is that as editors, it is a specific skill set, and photographers sometimes think, I'll just go into editing because I can't shoot anymore or whatever, or the editor just sits in the desk and spikes my pictures or pushes them. That's not the case at all. It is a very specific skill set, and good editors are like people like Sean or May or anyone on this panel actually, that understand that they are the conduit point between something that exists out there called a market, which is what photographers are being paid to service, right? So we all have these ideas of, I want to be a photographer, I want to cover this and stuff. But the reason you get paid is because there's a market, and we are the conduit point between you and the market. And sometimes the advice that we're bringing and the way that we're looking at stories, for example, when May is talking about the variety of pictures, she's saying that for a very specific reason, because there's a way those stories are structured online. And similarly, when I'm looking at pictures in print, there's a specific way pictures are printed. If it's a 3-picture story, you might have a 4-column, a little detail, and a 2-column, which can't be like, too loose or too tight. There are reasons we ask for these things. So when photographers get lost in the process and think that we are the end of ups and downs,
I can see you getting very
sorry, yeah.
But I'm just going to throw that over to LeAnne over in.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I just wanted to make that point that we are a very important conduit point. Actually, and people really understand that.
So like Rappler is quite a unique organization in that it's kind of this very, very digital first kind of news organization and so forth. So can you talk a little bit about like your role as a photo editor in this organization that has this very, very specific kind of digital first approach, and then how that kind of fits into the way that media operates in the Philippines.
Well, Rappler is not your traditional newspaper or whatever. It's a social media network. So it's not picture driven. It's more of data. Actually, we're video first, or as in our description, we're a multimedia publication. So it's all multimedia. So it's not just pictures, but we also need videos, whatever you can. My job at Rappler is to management of our photos, sourcing them, assigning or commissioning photographers who can take this coverage, who can take these assignments like that. And also scanning the social media, wire providers of available photos that can accommodate or that can be placed in our stories. And I have different tasks in the organization. Like I also do the accounting of how you will pay your photo stringers, sign photographers, like that. You talk every morning, attend story conferences, ask desk editors, ask reporters, what do they need for this story? What are the stories they're working on? That's it. What's different about Rappler is we're trying to build a community of individuals like who want to share their stories from their localities, wants to share the latest update on the present conditions of the weather in their places, or a disaster that took place. So some or a lot are asking why are you allowing pictures from or getting pictures from the social media, allowing contributors from this tiny province giving you this kind of photographs, or are you on a tight budget, or don't you have any money to pay professional photographers, something like that. But of course, we're small, we don't have money actually to really pay. But in terms of the photographs that we use, we source them from the wire agency, from Reuters primarily, and some stringers who wish to contribute to the publication if they are on the scene for these photographs.
Okay, so actually, then I'm going to throw that a little bit wide open now and say, ask the question about like how, from an editorial desk point of view, do you vet photographers? Like, how do you work with photographers? How do you know that they are working ethically? How do you know that what they are filing is, accurate, correct, and true? Right? What are the sort of processes that you have in place to make sure that you don't get caught out by what a photographer does in the field?
I think
for photographers, I think I always make sure that I know these photographers. I know the following photojournalist, ethics, everything. I just don't get someone that I knew online or not having met them personally. And if you're talking about provenance of photos that we use, we always check on them. So if it's a matter of working with photographers, I work with some people that I know in the industry, those who have worked since the 90s until now. and
So Reuters.
present young photographer.
If I may, sorry, go on.
Go ahead, Sanjit.
If I may add, I think it's it's really part of my work is also to look for the reason I was also hired in Bloomberg was to. So I have no photo editing experience. So when I joined Bloomberg, I had zero photo editing experience. So for me, it was a really steep learning curve, and I had to learn really quick because we're in a market moving news organization. We're a financial news organization, so there is no room for error. And Bloomberg, one of the things that first thing you tell you is integrity and accuracy, and these two things. You learn that as a photojournalist, but it's kind of repeated on and on. That accuracy is very important because if you, as a reporter, write something and based on that can be market moving, can be detrimental, you can get sued, people lose money. But more than that, as a photo editor, your role, when you send out photos, when somebody else uses them, a wrong information can lead to apologies. Can lead to publications writing correction note, and nobody likes correction notes. Just to add, my role is also to build stories. So when I assign photography, it's not only for Wire News. I work with reporters who either based in their own regions or editors who are based in Hong Kong or in Singapore, and we work together to produce a story wherein they have their text, whether it's an enterprise piece or if it's a long form narrative, word narrative, not photo narrative, because photo narratives is handled by another team. So we take on, when I assign a photographer, I kind of know what the story is going to be and what we need to assign for. So it's specific to, as what Vivek was talking about earlier, and Maye is like, we're looking for those little loopholes and to fill and make sure that everything works. If you're suddenly talking about, a card manufacturer who makes we started doing a story about card manufacturing, and suddenly we don't know where the plastic comes from, where the die cut comes from. It doesn't work. But coming back to this, is finding photographers. It's crucial, and my role was to kind of scour my own network as a photographer, knowing people I know, but at the same time working with other photographers who know other photographers. But I somehow, I'm a little old Jurassic. I don't trust Instagram for some reason, because the dynamics have changed. It has already, it's no longer a photographer's platform. And I remember when it was set up, my friend Teru, who I'm sure some of you know, who was asked to join Facebook to start Instagram. And I remember I was in New York and he said, hey man, if you're not on Instagram, you may get extinct, because that's the new reality. And I don't trust Instagram now. I used to earlier. I trust websites. I trust collectives. I trust Women Photograph, which is a great platform to find photographers. There are other platforms, and I highly recommend photographers to either join those platforms or please update your websites, because you can find Instagram. Unfortunately, it's a filter-based reality. I can't trust Instagram. One photo cannot tell me the story as much as a website with a sequence of images can tell me what the capability of photographer is and how true they are in, even if it doesn't matter whether language is an issue, but we're looking for visual language. And the visual language can be seen in a website or a platform, which is what I'm going to use later on when I lay out a story or when I publish it on to syndicate to our clients. So websites.
So you're saying those who are hoping to get an assignment with Bloomberg, with Sanjit, don't go the Instagram route. Continue.
No, please, by all means, go Instagram route to satisfy your subjects that you're reaching out to. But also remember, Instagram is no longer a photo-friendly photographers community anymore. It's a marketeers community. It's a Kim Kardashian's community. It is, based on what you're looking for. If I'm a motorcyclist, if I start looking for a motorcycle helmet, it'll sell me 20 other things about motorcycle helmets. But I'm a photographer, I'm looking for photographs. It's not going to send me that. But would I really trust? And I honestly, I request photographers to not put everything on the Instagram. Remember, those photos can be stolen, can be used by Facebook, can be republished. You will not get a penny out of it. So if you think somebody's going to look at your work and give me work, go to LinkedIn. As Vivek said, my email, everything is there. Sanjit Das works for Bloomberg. We have a strict policy of how when we sign up a contract-based work, but it's all there. Please come and work for us. We're constantly looking for photographers, honest, young, local photographers.
Can I?
Maybe I know everybody has something to say. So if someone send you a URL, a link, will you click on it? A photographer say, I have this interesting project.
Yeah, okay. Let's just keep it simple, okay? Because this whole conversation can be a one-day thing. But I think generally, at Reuters at least, and this is what LeAnne kind of spoke to, we work with photographers that we know. However, that doesn't close the door to budding young photographers, right? I think you have to understand, if you understand why we do what we do and why we keep the gate very tight, then maybe you can kind of calibrate in a way that will work for you. So in this day and age, there's so much information. Not all of it's reliable, and we are trying to sift through that nonsense, right? So there's so much that goes into news gathering. Yes, I'll click on the link, but here's the thing. I'm not just gonna entertain any random person, right? If you're interested in getting an assignment, right, you can put together a portfolio, send an email, be patient, and just say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm trying to look for work. I want to put myself out there as a possible freelancer. Our job is to triage through your work. And don't forget, here's another tip for you. The community is really small, photographers. If you do good work, photo editors talk to each other. But it goes the same as if you screw up an assignment, or if you do something very unethical, or if you make up a photo that was created on AI and it's not okay on our platforms, it's like we will talk, right? So this is not a threat. This is just a, clean up your own backyard, know what you're trying to pitch, but you also have to understand that a relationship has to be built. We can't just give you the sexiest assignment out there, right? We also need to curate what we do and who we work with. So just understand the mechanics of it and why it takes a while, but you can build that relationship, but build the foundation that will help yourself, right? And I think there is some value in creating a website or a PDF. You don't have to go out and do this whole shabam of things to impress us, your sincerity. We just need to know how you work, and that you understand basic ethics as well.
Okay. Going back to Vivek, where is your hunting ground? How do you find photographers?
Yeah, so actually I'm quite interesting in this, because actually one of the things I've done in my roster is when I took it over, I had around 18 people that I'd inherited from the previous editor. So I've struck a really careful balance between those two things. The people that were already on the roster are still there, and I'm giving them plenty of work, but I've actually gone out of my way to hire completely untested photographers, actually, to be honest. So what is my hunting ground? We have so at Getty, we have an official form. If you Google work with us Getty, you're going to find it. Okay. So for most people that come to me, I'm going to tell you to fill up the form anyway, because that not only because I want you to do it in a formalized way, but also because it means that your stuff gets registered with us and your details sit there. We have it sends us in the editorial team. For example, if you're a photographer in Asia and you're applying via that form, our entire editorial team in Asia is going to get that, and somebody is going to look at it within a certain time period. Now, you may not get a positive entry and a positive reply, because, as Maye says, there are many metrics that go into deciding who, and the amount of work we can give is limited. At Getty, it's not shrinking, but it's steady. So we're always up against those constraints, as Maye well knows. So fill in the form, for God's sake. Go and Google it if you want to try and work with Getty, right? These are simple things that you can do as a photographer. Don't intrude on the editor's personal space. And website portfolio, don't send me a portfolio with pictures from 9 years ago saying that you work for SOPA Images. As Maye says, we're photo editors. We talk between each other. We know the scene. We largely know the photographers that are really good, and we're going to get in contact with them if we really want them. But if you are a photographer proactively coming to look to us for work, you need to have your basics in order. Have a portfolio that's varied, that has a variety of things like single news stories, maybe sport and entertainment if you're interested in those sectors. Make sure there's variety there and you're approaching people in a very proactive, positive, but polite and kind of relationship building way, because this whole thing, as Maye is saying, as the others are saying, works on relationships. So you need to invest your time in that, and that trust thing that we're talking about when it comes to ethics. Don't ever break that. I've had people on my own roster that have broken my trust, and I can tell you that once it's broken, it's very hard to come back from. So gain your editor's trust, because you're going to have to work in that relationship for a long time, right? Like, so yeah.
Very early on in career, I was told that you're as good as your last job. You mess up once, you're never going to get the job again. It's as simple as that. It just, you can get accolades, but people talk like you mentioned. I remember one of the editors I was talking to said, when photographers meet, they talk about gear. When editors meet, they talk about photographers. I think that's a difference.
Yeah, I really like that.
I will say something very important though. This is not to make you think that we gossip behind your back all the time. We don't have that free time. What we do though is we do look out for freelancers. We know how hard it is out there to make a living. If I can't assign, I will go to Getty and go like, hey, someone's looking for work. I can't use this story. You might be interested. Or, like, Sanjit, there's this story, blah, 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 that, we're not interested in. Are you? So I know my platform is my market's a bit different in the US and in Europe. We share stories even with like the newspapers, like The Guardian will pick it up. Now, here's another space which I think you guys, it's worth investing the time and effort. I find a lot of my photographers, not my photographers, but our freelance pool, for me, from portfolio reviews. And I know we're trying to like boost that, so stay tuned, but at least from the efforts from our end. But, just take this, a lot of these portfolio reviews are virtual. So go look out for them, okay?
I want to go to Hui-Fen. And Hui-Fen, do you have a database,
Yeah.
like something happen?
Yeah. Sorry.
Do you have
Sorry,
like a Hui-Fen?
okay, for us, yeah. For us, we have internship program. So a good portion of our full-time staffers, they were interns at the Straits Times before. And even before, we put them through, even as interns, right? We see their portfolios, and then we have like, one-on-one interview with them. And we put them on like 6 months training. So from that is a good gauge of whether, the person's strength and character. Yeah, and for freelancers, we, like what Maye said, like, we do ask around, we check their social media, we are not stalkers, but we check their work on social media, and also we ask, like, we find out who are their clients. So sometimes based on those, it can be like a good gauge also.
And Luke, can you do, talking about kind of bringing photographers into the sort of professional development space, like, you talk about foreign photographers, just mention a little bit how you go about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing for us is we generally work with photographers who don't have websites. They use Instagram, but still the website isn't there, but they're incredibly talented. Our platform, we specifically look for storytellers. So we look very much for documentary photography because we have quite a limited variety of stories. We do long form features. So we look for somebody who's able to tell that story in pictures, which is actually really hard to find. There's a lot of spot news photographers who are very good at, protests and actions, but to actually create a story is quite a challenge for photographers who haven't grown up in that environment. So we run mentorship programs. We've just completed our second one, where we mentor local photographers. The last one we did was six photographers, and we team them up with 6 journalists. And the idea is that the photographers and the journalists work together to tell the story, because I think photographers can learn a lot from journalists about how to tell a story. You know, for example, we get these pitches. We get very few pitches from photographers, which I find quite surprising. But when we do, it's always very wide, general subjects. So it'll be like, I would like to document Burmese minorities in Thailand. And I'd be like, okay, so what's the story? And I'm like, well, you know, daily life of that, you know, of the migrant community. I'd be like, okay, so what's the story? And so for us, we have a very specific way of looking at it. And your question at the beginning about how do we vet photographers, that's really important for us because we cover very sensitive subjects. And our hard stories is we're very small. We're a little family. We're very tight knit, and we have a big network over Thailand. So we know all the photographers really personally. They've worked for us on several stories. We do follow-up calls with communities just to check that everything was okay. You know, they were respectful. They did their work professionally, and that's how we work. But it is a process. Thailand doesn't have this sort of documentary storytelling. You know, it's
the culture.
I mean, Vivek might know. It's hard to find basically people who are really good documentary photographers. There are some amazing ones. Don't get me wrong, but I'd like to see more.
Yeah, really agreed there. Like more out of Thailand. It's there are lots of good photographers, but to come to that level where you're working at that storytelling level, you know, beyond the kind of bosh there you have it picture, it's not the easiest thing. Yeah, totally agreed. But if I can just say, I actually really respect that last point that you just raised there, and I didn't know that you guys were doing this, and I think it's so great that you're checking with the communities that these photographers are working in to see how they're working. And I think that's you know, in the age in which we're operating, it comes to as no surprise to anyone that we're all under pressure over our process and our practices and how cleanly we're operating from multiple angles, you know, from everything from ethics to representation and stuff. And that's super important. So that's really impressive, Luke, and that's such a great way to operate. I mean, it's hard to scale up to a thing like Getty, but that's a really wonderful thing to be doing. I just wanted to come back to like 2 or 3 points that other people made because I found them quite interesting. I've just got them written down here. Social media. So going to social media, like, you know, I'm obviously looking, like, I'm on Instagram and everyone knows that I post a lot on it. I have little breaks from it and I come back and I do all this kind of like crazy photo inspirational posting from time to time. That's because I really truly believe in that stuff. But for photographers out there, I just want to really press the point that we are all journalists and we're all looking to hire you for a journalistic product. So it is important that you maintain political neutrality there, okay? If you're looking to work with an agency of the scale of a Getty or a Reuters or something like that, and you know, and I understand people want to do campaigning journalism, that's totally fine. But when you're looking for work with us as agencies, we need you to walk that line of neutrality because that's part of the reason, part of the raison d'etre for us to exist and to sell our services to multiple clients around the world, because you can expect neutrality from us, right? So that's really important. With regards to, like, you know, killing your own babies, as photographers like to say, you know, when you're editing your own work and you're quite bad at it. We had that conversation earlier, and I just actually, it made me think of a podcast recently where I was listening to the music producer Rick Rubin talk about how he works with difficult artists when they're trying to, like Johnny Cash and people like that, when they're trying to put together an album. And what they do there is that he's not going to work with anyone who isn't working in service of the product. Okay. So, like, I have a very similar philosophy. Most of my roster knows it. Like, you know, I spend time getting to know the photographers on a very intimate level. If I'm onboarding new and untested photographers, I've got about 6 or 8 out there that weren't even on the radar before they came to Getty. I spend hours sitting with them talking about photos, ethics, shooting, everything from the technical aspects of it. And there are people that call me when they get stuck with ethical things. You know, I might be driving down south on a holiday and a photographer will ring me and go, hey, I've got this ethical situation. And I enjoy that relationship and I want them to have that, because we are in a position where we can provide that information, but it's a two-way process. So the photographer's got to come to that with an open mind as well. You know, and that's a place where mutually the two of us can meet to improve the quality of that kind of ethics offering that we're doing across the industry. It's important now because people are really putting us under the microscope, right? So think about that Rick Rubin thing. It's always in service of the product. If you really care about the photography, it's not about you and me. It's about how good is that product. And so let's talk about that, right? And finally, like Tom, you were talking about voice in the head, Charlie's Angels. Earlier, like photographers must hear us editors inside their heads all the time. I'm sure like out of the 60 odd people on my roster, you'll get 58 saying yes, and he never shuts up. Okay. So, so I'll leave it at that.
Right. So
You raised his hand.
yeah, LeAnne, you raised your hand earlier. Did you have something you wanted to just add in there?
Yes. Well, I just want to add that Rappler as a multimedia, our priority is the reporters. The reporters does everything, like taking videos, taking photographs, in order to upload it to the app and to some social media accounts that social media platforms that we have. My job is to develop our reporters, teach them how to take pictures, and how to take pictures and edit them before sending it to me. And one more thing that Rappler does is like we try to develop communities, reach out to students, reach out to community leaders, internships that we can teach them how to deliver the news, how to write, how to take pictures, how to take videos, everything. So it's not we are not in the business really, or I am not in the business really of hiring a photographer. A photographer is only the last line of recourse when the reporter cannot do the task of taking the picture. Like there's a war there. I can't go there. Can you take pictures like that? And can you join me in taking pictures? They talk to me, okay, you can join them. How much do you want? How much will I pay you? What do I need? What else? That's all for now.
I think it's like you always like a really interesting point for me, which is the idea of photographers are not necessarily kind of journalists first, even when they're working for like the news media and you're trying to tell stories, right? And there's different kinds of kind of storytelling with photography. There is the spot news, there's value in that. There are news photographers who don't do long form documentary, don't know how to do it, and never will do it. And that's not their job. And their job is to be a breaking news photographer doing spot news. And then you've got long form documentary photographers who can't work under the pressure of like, a sort of spot news environment. And I think, it's really important as a photographer to find where you fit within that kind of news ecosystem. Just as we sort of like move into the next bit of this conversation, I think it's something that you just sort of like summarize a little bit, something that everybody has pointed out, which I feel is quite interesting, is how much the role of the photo editor is to assist photographers in the field, right? And to work with photographers in the field, make sure that they're doing their job correctly, make sure they're doing their story correctly, make sure they have the things that they need, make sure that they have all the resources, all the information, training before going and doing the story, and working with them when they've done it. I think that's a really important kind of role of the photo desk.
For a minute, before we go to Q&A, Sanjit, you have something to add? Right?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think, I when I was a photojournalist and now when I work as a photo editor, I haven't taken a photograph professionally, haven't taken a photograph in the past 7-8 years because I've delved deep into the photo editing part, and as much as I want, and I don't want to sort of distinguish. But one of the things that I wanted to say is that I get a lot of phone calls, a lot of messages, and a fair number of emails from photographers who say, "Hey, work is shrinking, man. I don't get as much work. What can I do?" And my only advice to them would be what Tom, just following what you were saying, is there is no shame in doing any kind of work as long as it's honest work. A lot of photographers would find it extremely difficult to go shoot a wedding. And I quote a friend of mine who would say that this is two people, I mean, there are photojournalists who go to war zones, put their life at risks. And then come back and complain, and they are the most horrible people at parties, including myself. When you go complain about, do you know how much this bottle of wine costs? This could feed a family of 5 for 1 year, and you're drinking this over a glass of. No, I used to be that guy, disgruntled, angry with what's happening around the world, and then going back and lashing it out on my friends who were hosting me for dinner because they hadn't seen me for 2 months while I was working in the jungles in Jharkhand with the rebels. So you have that, but I think there is no shame in doing a wedding, because if you're able to sell your soul, I'm not saying we're shooting a wedding is selling soul. If you're able to sell your soul to buy your freedom, put money and work on your projects and then put it out and say, look, I've done this project. I'm maybe willing to sell it. I'm willing to publish it, or have that as my portfolio, because as I said, you're as good as your last job, right? If you don't shoot, if you don't go out and produce work, and like as Vivek was saying, don't come back with a 9-year-old or 18-year-old story photo that got published in a cover of Time magazine. Well, that was good 18 years ago, but this is 2025. Let's move on. Things have changed. Use technology, become a drone pilot, become multifaceted, shoot weddings, be happy. Don't always have to have that sort of wear black hat, black jacket, just tape up your cameras. Don't be that guy, man. Just go out, have fun. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Tom. But no, I think the bottom line being is that when I was a photojournalist, we used to get week 10 days assignments. We don't get them as much. Times of, as Vivek was saying, even at Bloomberg, there is steady work. I'm constantly assigning almost every single day. But we're always looking for new photographers, but new photographers will only come in when there is new work being produced, because you need to evolve with the times. You can't shoot portraits folded 45-degree look up. No, those portraits were 1980s. Flash photography, hard flash photography is 1990s, late 1990s. We don't use that anymore. So don't look at work that was done when Berlin Wall fell, because that work was designed, developed based on what was going on in Europe that time. So, Paolo Pellegrin is amazing, but there are new photographers who are producing new work. I'm not saying Paolo is bad. I'm just saying that don't have them as your mentors for producing that kind of work. Look at Paolo's new work. So evolving with the times. And I'm always looking for local photographers. I'm looking for photographers, people who are living in their own countries, being willing to tell their own stories. Times have changed. People have talent. Photography is democratized. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have the most expensive, like a M10, 11, 12, whatever. You can shoot with an iPhone as long as you're able to produce a story and be able to tell the story.
Okay, awesome.
We'll go to Q&A pretty soon, but actually, there are a few good questions.
Should we formally move into the Q&A and then answer those questions?
Yeah, I think time is the essence. But, so actually, the first easy question, I guess, is what are you looking for in a portfolio? Say someone, is there room for specialization? Do you want to see all 20 portraits, or you want to see someone who's able to do everything, like sports, food illustration, business portraits? Or are you okay to see just 20 very nicely lit portraits?
I'll just jump in very quickly at the top of this one, if I could, because it's something that like we discuss in our household as 2 photo editors all the time. Know your client, okay? Because the answer, I think, is going to be different depending on who answers it.
And no, please don't send heavy 70 MB files. Just don't spam my mailbox. Website or
it's okay.
When somebody sends me an email, I would never click on the link. Kitchen, you were asking. I would always Google. Google or yeah, Google the photographer, always check who they are. But it's just no, I'm old school. I like websites, or I call up and speak.
I agree.
I think we'd all agree with that. I think photographers need to have a website, honestly speaking.
And they're cheap and they're free. WordPress.
Yeah, and you can
make
use
them.
Wix. You can use there's
Yeah.
plenty. Yeah.
I think it just
What about you, Maye?
I think it just says a lot more. It gives you a lot more room to hold space to show your different skill sets, right? And it helps us to get to know you a little bit more beyond the social media 2-second reels, right? I think we need to understand who your audience is, who your editor is, what are you doing. If you're pitching a story, don't write me a long essay. Do you know what I mean? So, but that's a whole conversation in itself. I think we need to understand context. But it's a very good segue, and it's a very nice point that you mentioned, Sanjit, is that photographers, for me at least, should be open to learning and trying new things, right? Because we're no longer in that era of storytelling, and we can touch on this in the Q&A, where it's just photo text. We hold space for that, but people don't just consume news in the linear way anymore, right? So you have to evolve as a journalist, right? And be open to trying to do short videos or learn how to fly a drone. I mean, within your means. But if you're open and you're willing to learn and try doing a 20-second video portrait, that's good enough, right? It's the attitude.
So basically, the message is know who you're applying to. You know,
Yes.
this organization is business.
Yes.
Then focus on
And do multiple things. Like as May's saying, we are at a point in a market where we can cry for as long as we want to about, it was like that yesterday. Well, it's today. And then today, it's probably good for you to know how to do at least video and photo. Drone really helps. If you can write a little bit, that's going to stand you above, and to develop the multiple storytelling things, keeping photo as your main thing. Of course, that's the thing that we care about the most still for everyone in the room here. But the marketplace has evolved. I think everyone's speaking in that same language. So I think for the people that are new here and listening to us, the marketplace is changing, and you guys are at the forefront of that change. So don't be afraid to dabble in the different things that we all need. I mean, at Getty now, I'm asking all our photographers to also do video, right? So Sean's in the same place, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. No video. If you can't do video, your future is
You're not going to
pretty
get work
grim.
with us.
Somebody is asking here, would be great if you could speak to the future of photojournalism. Future of photojournalism is exactly the same as it used to be back in the days. It's accuracy. You need to own your narrative. I think that's what it is. It's based, in the era. I'm sorry, anybody who's a Trump supporter, good for them. In the era of truth and Trump, what really works is truth. You have to, journalism stands on that basic foundation of accuracy and I'm forgetting, ethics. So that's going to stay there. I mean, somebody, Maye-E Ostentani is asking. I know Maye-E. Hello, Maye-E. Yeah, so that's the future of photojournalism. It's not bleak. It is absolutely. I mean, I hope it stays the same, because my future depends on it, because that's the only thing I know. But I think it's being ethical and being able to keep producing work is extremely important. I mean, please keep telling stories.
So just to sort of build off of that, if you're coming in and you're learning how to use all these different tools of the trade, different ways of telling stories, different ways of making pictures, doing video, doing stills, doing drone, being a writer, being able to write as well. We haven't spoken about the importance of captions, being able to write captions for your photographs. Being, as LeAnne is saying with Rappler, being a true multimedia journalist, being actually able to be a person out there in the field who can switch and do video and do photo and write and do all of these things. I think that sounds like a lot. That sounds like a lot. So, I mean, I was wondering if you could sort of like talk a little bit then about, is it too much to ask for us all to be doing all of these things, especially if you have digital, mobile, web, print, and you have all these different kind of very, very fluid ways of getting the media out there. And this is kind of one of the questions that we have, like, how is news consumed? Like, do we really, truly need to be fluent and flexible in dealing with all of these things?
I can answer that for at least for Reuters, because we do have clients that we essentially, it's a legacy news platform that we started off in, but we are evolving. Now, at least at Reuters, the focus is on mobile first, right? Because 70% to 80% of our stories are driven through social media to the story. So it's not even the .com site, it's mobile and our Instagram stories that drive traffic. So 80% of our traffic is driven from there. Now, what does that mean on the ground level for us, right? First of all, we won't change the way we operate as a newsroom in how we news gather, the ethics, or the way we tell stories. That is imperative that we stick to what we do because of what Sanjit said, misinformation in this day and age with disinformation, where you need to still have the old 101 photojournalism and journalism, like news gathering efforts, right? So we have all that. But how we consume it, how we gather the news, we have to keep that at the back of our mind, right? We don't have to be fluent in video, but you need to rise to the occasion when the occasion calls for it, right? You need to think of gathering the news. And this is for photographers who want to pitch to wire agencies, okay? I'm not saying, but even Straits Times, they have a STI platform and all. When you are there in a breaking news event, you have to think like all formats person, because that would bring you to the next level with the other freelancers who don't. Because you can serve like, oh, you can do a 20-second like live video and send it to WhatsApp to your editor at the desk and then take some photos, right? So I think it's about understanding how people consume the news, being ready to show up when the occasion calls. You don't have to be an expert in Premiere Pro, right? But you can also news gather for your colleagues. So you have to be able to, I like to say, code switch and shape shift, right? So I think that would make you very marketable as a human being overall, but you don't have to want things for the sake of wanting things. Mobile first is the way we are going. You can see New York Times does this squarish photos that fit. Doesn't mean that you go and photograph with your Hasselblad, right? And it doesn't mean that you go and shoot everything vertical, but we are in the day and age where vertical video is no longer a joke. So bear that in mind. And when you have the time, sometimes you news gather, I still make fun of it, but I'm doing it now because I have to do it just in case we need it, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
It really is an interesting point, Maye, what you said. I mean, so I work with photographers who we have to, whether it's a doorstopper or if it's a protest, or and in Korea and in Thailand we have a fair number of them. Getting a video, being, I'm not saying kowtow to your editor, but remember that if there was a photograph that you could have just put out your camera and taken a frame and taken 20 seconds of it, if that made it, and that made it to social, and that made it to different platforms, and even on .com and even for Bloomberg on the terminal, that makes you look better, because it also made the entire team of people, from the ground reporter to the editor on desk to the photo editor to the TV people, even gets played on TV. All that makes you look better. So it's about being more adaptable. And I'm just going to add to what you said. It's just being able to do more and be able to produce. Now, talking of, Tom, you said, is that too much? I can't say that about, so suddenly I'm taking off my Bloomberg hat and I'm talking as a photographer when I was one. I always thought of it. Yes, I always was. I'm still am a documentary photographer. Always believed in telling longer stories, but I also believed that photography, for me, was also a way of putting food on the table. It was what I was doing to earn my livelihood. And it is extremely important to think photography in a way that, what would you do if somebody was to ask you to run a business? Would you not go out of your way to produce certain kind of things to promote your business? So me as a photographer, what I used to do was to save money. And every year I would go to London, New York, and Paris, and go meet my editors, make appointments. So I was very lucky. I'm also a member of Panos Pictures. They really helped me. So I would call them up and say, I'm going to London for 5 days. Can you line up for your interviews? And I wasn't going to show my portfolio to people. And this is I don't know whether it's an advice or not. I would go and just meet editors and say, hey man, let's meet for a drink. Let's meet for coffee. Like, if you have 10 minutes, can we just quickly come up? Let's go for a coffee. If it's time for lunch, I'll meet you for lunch. And the idea was to be at the top of their mind when they're looking for a photographer in the region. And it really is. I'm not saying come meet me or go meet Vivek or LeAnne or Maye-E in New York. I mean, I'm not suggesting to do, but think of that. Think of when photo editors, at least I can talk about myself. I start work at 7 a.m. and I finish at 5 p.m. Those 10 hours are extremely hectic. I don't have any time. So even if I'm making a phone call to somebody, and I do a lot of phone calls because I can't type for that long, because it's easier for phone and call somebody. I will have a chat with somebody and say, well, think of invest in it. If you think you want to be a better one, learn different traits. If you think you can be just good with doing photos, good for you.
Okay, Sanjit, we go to Luke and Hui-Fien, and then Vivek. Okay, so Luke.
Yeah. So I just this sort of request asking photographers to do much more media. It's a really important point because, okay, whilst it allows the photographer to adapt, to be able to do video, be able to do writing, the media outlet has a responsibility to reimburse for those skills. Speaking personally, I've worked with Sanjit and I've done video. They pay extra for the video. Talking from experience, the vast majority of our photographers who we work with, they would create a package where 3 of them would do photos, they do a text, and they do the editing. They get paid about $180, which would then be divided. The photographer for 2 to 3 days of work would end up with about $60. So we at Hard Stories, we'd never expect someone to do more and more and more unless we're able to pay for that additional work. And this is a major problem with the publishing industry, is that people just want more and more and more, but they're not going to pay. And so I just wanted to make that.
Yeah, Hui-Fien?
No, yeah. Can I say that, it's important to have all these multi skills, and it's like, multi photojournalists, they are like icing on the cake. But the core skills are so very important. The person's work in photojournalism work, how the depth of the portfolio, how the person, having the third eye. So all this also helps. And the multi skills, usually we do send our staffers for training. Yeah, but what we usually look for is the core skills also, the third eye.
Yeah. Vivek?
I just wanted to follow on from a few things that the others have talked about, which is that all of the things that we are talking about are the things that make you more employable to editors like me or Sean or Luke when you have the budget and and the sort of thing. And actually, again, just to come back to it, I really respect the ways you guys are handling that, Luke. That's quite a ethical way to do it, and really good on you. To go to, do I need to do? So I'm also looking at some of the questions that are here, right? Like, do I need to do video? What are the challenges for the next 3 to 5 years? So I'll just address some of these things. So I think they are important and they're on the minds of people out there. Firstly, New York Times, any story that you see now, the reporter is doing a 4x5 video that comes up on the app, okay, and also comes on the homepage when you look at it. We are going there, and though like at Getty we're not doing vertical video, that's easy enough to crop if they really want to, so we are going to a place where that's going to be like part of your workflow. I know it's not ideal. I know it's more that you have to do for less. And unfortunately, I don't want to have to defend it, but that is where the industry is. So let's be cognizant of that, because we can have an idealized situation. And this is something that I talk about with my photographers a lot. We can have an idealized situation, but we are existing in a pragmatic reality. I'm an idealist at heart. It's why I'm a photographer. It's why I do this job, but we do have to adapt to where we are. And that's how we're going to be able to thrive. We are facing challenges, and we're both going to have to come towards each other, meaning the content creators, the photographers, and the videographers, and the organizations tracking together to meet in the middle somewhere to get past this very difficult technological, financial situation that we find ourselves in. And we're so important, editors, in that process of helping the photographer understand that wider context in which they exist. So just to answer some of those questions, Maye-E, hi. What challenges for photographers broadly over the next 3 to 5 years? It's in that area for me. I think you guys need to make sure that you've got food on your table. So don't be afraid of doing the commercial work. Don't be afraid of doing all of those things. Drop all that stuff about, oh, I'm a high-minded journalist and stuff. Put food on your table first. You are not a useful journalist if you are not eating. Okay. The next question here is, does editors look for a reference person when new photographers are approached? In my case, not necessarily, but I get to know you very deeply indeed. And I will ask other photographers like what they think of you. Okay. So don't be an asshole, because that's going to make it much less for you to be employed, and don't burn bridges and stuff like that. It's a small industry. And then the last question here was, how can photo desks evolve towards the new way news is being consumed now? Actually, I think that's really in Maye-E's ballpark. At Getty, we're adapting by providing, we're B2B, right? So we're adapting by creating that raw content that's being used in the way that she's talking about, like storytelling in a vertical format, phones, different ways of thinking about it, and what that means for the individual pictures that you shoot as photographers. You need the variety. You need to think of breaking up the visual flow, all of that kind of stuff. And I think, okay, so I think I've got all the questions that people asked. I'll shut up now so someone else can go.
Okay, so just
we don't do AI. Just to add that Bloomberg has a very strict policy on AI. If there is an AI photograph, or we do produce an AI, we use AI to do a summary, a three bar summary of the stories, but for photos we don't. So for now there is no room for AI at Bloomberg, but it's one field that I would really like to dive and learn and see how it can be used for photography, for personal use. And I think there's I do follow some of the AI artists who are. So I was just a little off note. I was working with a festival, and I was asking a photographer to produce an entire body of work on AI, because he had these things that were based on dreams. So how do you illustrate dreams? AI.
We're going to do that one next, Sanjit. So let's come to that in a bit.
Okay, guys, I'm just going to drop in here and say that we have 4 minutes to finish, because we have another panel after this, and we have to do tech checks as well. So if you could please keep your closing remarks fairly succinct. Thank you.
Okay. LeAnne, do you have anything that you would like to add? Just to kind of to wrap up there.
Well, actually, it's I guess from what I hear, everyone is talking about the future, or that photographers should add something to their arsenal, like video, writing, especially. Yes, because where are the people now getting their news? They get their news on TikTok, they get their news on YouTube, they get the news on social media. So how can we present it to them? Let's produce TikTok stories, Instagram stories, Instagram videos. We've been doing that. I saw New York Times had been doing that in 2017, 2018. And for photographers, don't be afraid to explore, because it's not too much. I heard the word, that's too much for a photographer or for a reporter to do. It's not too much. Look at your TikTok feeds. These children can do everything. They write, they edit, they compose. They are the future. You should be afraid of them.
Right.
And give them the proper education. That will happen to you. And I may add something. A year ago, I was invited by WordPress Photo to look at the portfolio of the winners of the 2023 photo contest. I asked, "What's your problem with your photos?" No one is buying it. No one is publishing it. Why? I don't know. Maybe they're tired of photographs. Yeah, maybe they're tired because the presentation now is not only the newspaper, the magazine. There's the internet. They want videos. They want multimedia. So better explore those. And photos are very subjective. Write about it. Write what you saw. Because people want to know the truth.
Awesome. Okay, so on that note, like we could go on forever and ever and ever, right? Everybody is super passionate about all of this stuff. I can really tell. So I'm just gonna do one thank you to all of our panelists for joining us and taking time out of their busy schedules and sharing, all of these important insights. And yeah, I can really feel like the love and the passion for the whole ethos of the photo industry here. So that's my quick thank you to everyone. Kitchen.
I also want to recognize 4 individuals. I think to put together something like this takes quite a little bit of effort, and there are 4 individual. Can you wave like a?
Yeah, make sure you're alive. Show us your TikTok dancing.
We were very fortunate when we went to POY Asia. We had some volunteers, and this year we don't have POY Asia, but the volunteers they're eager to chip in. So when we decided to do this set of seminars, they all came in to help us out. They play a very important role. They're also photographers in their own rights. So we want to thank Brian. So Brian, Yan-Ling, Sarah, and Hilary, thank you very much for helping us.
And also thank you to Yan-Ling for stepping in at the last minute on our photo contest conversation last week. That was very brave of her and really appreciate it.
I think before we go, we are going to let the attendees go, right?
Yes. To everyone in the audience, if you want to join our next conversation happening at 5, there's a link right down in the chat there.
But maybe we can do a little bit of housekeeping just among the panelists.
Okay, Ken.
Panelists don't go first.
Panelists, I'm going to end this webinar. If you could all just sign in again, I'm going to start a practice session. If you could all just sign in again then.
And to everybody who's the panelist, thank you for all your questions. Thank you for being here. This webinar thing, we talked about trying to do like a kind of just an open room and a very, very, community-based thing. The logistics are crazy. Maybe one day we'll all be, somewhere in person where we can have like lots of in-person Q&A and then go all to the pub afterwards.
I thought you were going to say lots of beers.
Well, hang on.
You guys are doing a really amazing thing especially for all the young photographers out there that are trying to find their way in a very difficult moment. I hope we do more of these in Asia. We need to. And we need to help people connect with what we're doing and what's going on in the industry, right? So thank you really for the back end, guys. Thank you. And to all of you for putting it on.
We do want to tap your brain for maybe 5 more minutes. So we're going to let the participants, the attendees leave.
We're staying in this room. Okay, got you.
Guys, I'm going to end this webinar, but please sign in again with your links that was
into this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you all.